So I finally played the first two episodes of Life is Strange Double Exposure, and man, I gotta say, people are not happy with certain characters. So I'm gonna go over that today. I originally was not gonna do a video about it. I was like, yeah, it's just probably not worth it. But after like reminiscing over the game over the last couple days, I've been thinking a lot about it. I've been thinking about Max and Chloe because they are some of my favorite characters, and I really loved the direction they took in the first game with two endings, like two separate endings that determine some very important things. I'm going to spoil a lot in this video too about the first Life is Strange and the second, second sequel, Life is Strange Double Exposure that just came out, because I want to discuss some of the reactions to this news that people are taking very hard. And yeah, let's just get into it. And yeah, beware that there's going to be spoilers in this video. So first, I'm going to give some context about the first game. Life is Strange is one of the most beloved games for a reason, mainly because of its writing, its characters, and the way they develop the relationship between the main two protagonists, Max Caulfield and Chloe Price. And I remember specifically they said that they were not going to continue the story of Max and Chloe. So when this game was announced, everybody just lost it like a troglodyte discovering fire for the first time. So I was like very curious to see what was going to happen, even though the comics kind of follow a story that continues Max and Chloe's adventures, especially in one of the two endings, because the first ending is when Max saves the entire town. A lot of characters get saved, but Chloe dies, which is the ending that I think it's considered canon. I don't know how to describe it. And then there's the second ending where the town gets destroyed. A lot of characters get killed, but Chloe survives, and Max and Chloe continue their adventures and their relationship. And that is the ending that is considered canon in the comic book storyline. I mentioned this in my video that I made in June after the game was announced, like saying my theories about the game, what was going to happen, and I'm also going to talk about that. But first, I want to like establish what really is going on here. So basically, well, I'll talk about the game itself later, but I want to mention the comics first because I think it is important. So in the comic book storyline, they introduced Max's new power, which was the power to like go between realities. So that is something that the game basically follows, but in a completely different storyline. So I assume that Double Exposure follows the comic book storyline because it is left kind of like open. But to make a long story short, Max and Chloe end up together after Max's multiversal adventure, where she even meets Rachel Amber. It's something that happens in the comics, and she goes through all these timelines trying to save Chloe for a second time. She returns to the original timeline where she ends up with Chloe, and then they basically continue their relationship. So it kind of fits with the beginning of Double Exposure. I assume that a couple years passed between the ending of the comics and the beginning of Double Exposure, maybe like 4 or 5 years, considering Chloe is, I think, 28. Like, it's not confirmed in the game, but she's basically in her late 20s by this point. But I think it's important to mention the whole intense storyline in the context of Max and Chloe's relationship, because it is important for their character development and to analyze why Deck 9 took the decisions they took when they were writing the storyline for the game. Now let's go into the central problem that people are complaining. So basically you have two options. You can determine if like the decision at the end of the game. It's kind of like a Wolfenstein situation where you choose which character dies at the beginning of the first game, and then in the second one you follow that same decision. But in this one, basically, if you choose that the Bay ending, where the whole town gets destroyed and Chloe lives, the only interaction you have with her are through text. So you can kind of like look at their past texts, like Max's journal. Just Chloe. Yeah. Oh my God. Look at this. Look who it is. I just found gold, man. And then if you choose the other ending, Chloe's basically dead. You get some messages from Joyce. But if you remember, in this storyline, she never even gets to meet Chloe after their first adventure. So there's a lot of like time travel involved. So she basically never meets her after she leaves the town, comes back, and basically the events of Life is Strange 1 never happened. But let's focus on the Chloe ending because that's the one everybody's angry about. So basically they break up. Max and Chloe are not girlfriends anymore because they have a romantic relationship that continues all the way into the comics, and people really dig that relationship. That's probably one of the largest ships in the history of fiction, I guess, at this point. So I think Deck 9 was really playing with fire when they made this decision, especially after they promised that they were going to respect both endings. Like, people are very angry. Like, some of the comments in like their Instagram posts are insane. Basically, every single one of the comments in the recent posts are just hatred and anger and just disappointment from the fans. And I totally understand it. I was very skeptical of this decision, especially after, you know, it was done in such a way that it's kind of like, it feels like they're brushing off the entire relationship. I don't know how to describe it. So what I want to do here is make an argument for both cases, for the relationship and continuing and the relationship breaking up. So first, let's analyze why they should have continued Max and Chloe's relationship. Obviously, if you play the first game, if you read the comics, if you understand everything they went through and what's going on in their relationship, everything they've gone through together. It makes sense that for them to just continue and, you know, be happy together because they understand each other. They realize that they're very special for each other. So yeah, checking my notes. Yeah, they've gone through multiversal adventures, serial killers. Basically, one of them died and sacrificed an entire town for the other. Yeah, it makes sense they stay together. It makes sense they love each other. Case closed. But now I'm going to make an argument for the other side because I think also it's important to notice that there's 3 episodes left in the game. So I want to wait until the final episode to give my full opinion. But also it's important to notice that these 2 characters grew up very fast. So they've gone through some of the most intense stuff that you can imagine. They basically had to like go from place to place living together. And relationships, basically things don't always work out the way you want to. You get into fights, you get into disagreements, and that is something that could have happened in the, you know, the time between the comics, the end of the comics and the beginning of Double Exposure that we don't know about. Maybe we'll get more clues. And I think that's the thing that bothers me the most. It's not the fact that Max and Chloe broke up per se, but just the way that they brush everything to the side in order to focus on Max's new story, you know, with Safi's murder and all that kind of stuff. I feel like it is important to address, you know, a relationship that many fans consider like very strong, very important, and basically central to the Life is Strange mythos and universe. So let me further explain what I mean, and at the same time describe what I would have done differently if I was Deck 9. So basically, the comic follows the ending where Chloe lives. I feel like this one should have followed the ending where Chloe dies. I feel like it would have been a much more dramatic option and just basically give the player no choice. And as the story progresses, as the episodes go by, like introduce Chloe to the story via the, you know, the time travel, no, not the time travel, like the dimension travel, multiversal thing. I feel like Max should go like through different dimensions, like as we saw at the ending of episode 2. She was going through different dimensions that are start like merging and converging into each other. That makes for a great story. I feel like that's one of the few ways where multiversal stories get justice done, because I feel nowadays like those kind of stories just provide a medium for lazy writing, as we saw in the case of, you know, the first time I read in the comics that Rachel Amber was back, I was like, yeah, that is totally fan service. And the same thing with some of the Marvel stuff. So I feel like the best course of action is just like introduce Chloe to the story and have them meet each other in the ending where she had to sacrifice her, because I feel like that would have provided a lot more character development to Max, and it would have made for a lot of cool stuff. Like maybe she can go and meet the other Max that was in Chloe's life, maybe realize that it wasn't as perfect, so maybe that would provide some closure, some forgiveness for herself. There's a lot of really important and awesome story potential right there. So I think that would have been a better course of action, because the comics already cover the entire story where Chloe lives. So I feel like if you want to see that, you should read the comics. And it just provides a lot more material for the Life is Strange universe and to continue in both canon endings. And it also gives the message that no matter what you choose, there's problems, there's beauty, there's benefits, there's like things you would have wished you would have done differently. But at the end of the day, each decision leads to equally important outcomes. So yeah, to conclude this video, I feel like people are getting too worked up sometimes, but it's understandable too, because of how important these characters are, especially with the themes like the story has. It was one of like the first games that really introduced those like romantic LGBT themes, so obviously people are going to be very attached to that. And I think it's important to just basically have good writing. I feel like you can make any choice you want if you have good writing in the story, and I feel like this one just dismissed the entire Max and Chloe storyline in favor of the new one with Safi and Max and the new characters, which I'm just starting to warm up to. So yeah, I guess that's everything for today. Let me know in the comments what you think about Max and Chloe's situation. And yeah, I guess those are pretty much all my thoughts. So, oh yeah, by the way, I'm going to be streaming the game when it comes out fully in 3 weeks. So yeah, check that out, and I'll see you guys next time.